Welcome to Vices and Virtues, a series of animal stories for adults. I'm your storyteller, Matt Eddy. Vices and Virtues is a collection of fictional short stories written and read by me and can be listened to in any order. To find the other stories in this collection, please visit matteddystories.com. There you will find new stories, podcasts, and upcoming events. Full videos have been produced for each story and can be found on YouTube. Today's story is about a walrus who wants to leave home. Please enjoy The Walrus. Icy Alaskan winds cut through the small town, buffeting the rusted truck as it hurtled down the gloomy road toward home. Walrus sat in the back seat, playing with the tassel on her mortarboard from high school graduation. Her dad clenched the steering wheel tightly with his flippers, pressing his beady eyes against the windscreen to navigate the darkness. He wasn't talking to Walrus's mum in the passenger seat, who sat staring out the window, twisting her pearl necklace between her flippers. Before the graduation ceremony, they argued over whether he could wear his overalls from the fishing dock instead of the ill-fitting suit he reserved for weddings and funerals. Mum won, but Dad's consolation was not wearing a tie. The top button on his shirt could no longer contain his thick, leathery neck. Walrus pulled a brush from her pocket, ran it through her long, elegant whiskers, and wondered what was wrong with her. All her friends had jobs lined up at the dock, but Walrus couldn't see herself there. The town revolved around the dock and chit-chat about weather conditions, daily catches, and market prices. Her resentment at the tedium bled over to how she felt about the town, infecting how she thought about the animals closest to her. She couldn't understand why they were so willing to settle. "Did you have fun today?" said Mum, turning in her seat with a hopeful smile perched above her long, yellowy tusks. Walrus shrugged. She was glad to have graduated, but high school had been a drag. The only thing that gave her a sense of belonging was the theatre group. During her senior year, she'd been cast in the lead role for the annual high school production. Walrus practiced her lines every day for months. The culmination of her efforts was rewarded on opening night by a gymnasium full of families and friends applauding and chanting her name during the curtain call. "We're so proud of you, honey," said Mum. "You're all grown up now. You excited to start working with your friends at the dock?" Walrus had already made her mind up that she couldn't stay here. She just hadn't told her parents. "Hey," Dad called, momentarily lifting his gaze to the rearview mirror to get Walrus's attention. "Your mum asked you a question." The grinding of Dad changing gears and the rattling chassis were a visceral reminder of everything Walrus wanted to avoid. "Mom, I'm moving to LA to be an actor," Walrus announced. Dad spluttered as though he'd caught a fishbone in his throat. "I don't belong here," Walrus continued. The truck swerved to the side of the road and stopped in the gravel. Dad turned in his seat. His grey, pudgy face was cold. "Don't be silly. You come from a family of hard-working walruses. You're taking the job at the dock." "You told me to follow my dreams," said Walrus. There was nothing for her in Alaska that could make her feel the way she did when the audience rose from their seats and cheered for her. "That's not what I meant," said Dad. "LA is no place for a walrus. You may as well be an astronaut." "Astronaut? Dad, I'm moving to LA whether you like it or not." "I'm telling you what's best for you. What about your friends? They'll be at the dock with a steady paycheck." "Dad, I need you to be supportive." Mum patted Dad on his shoulder. "Honey, we only want you to be happy. Maybe there's a theatre nearby you could look into." "Where are you going to live?" shouted Dad. "You'll be out on the streets." "I've started looking at places online," Walrus replied, the tears welling in her eyes. "I'll be fine." "Give yourself a week to think it over, honey," said Mum, and your dad makes a good point. I'm leaving, said Walrus. Well, I'm not sponsoring this madness, said Dad, shaking his flipper. You'll be on your own. What the heck's wrong with staying put? Everything, thought Walrus. She searched his onyx-like eyes for a glimmer of understanding. You're taking the job at the dock, yelled Dad. End of discussion. His whiskers bristled and his nostrils flared in annoyance. I'm leaving, muttered Walrus as the tears she'd held back fell from her face. Just think about it, said Mum. The gravel beneath the tires crackled as Dad eased the truck back onto the asphalt. Mum patted Walrus's lap before turning around and gripping her pearl necklace with one flipper. Walrus put in her headphones and turned on her music, quietly crying. Over the week, Walrus didn't change her mind and purchased an old pickup truck she found online. She also found a shared house in Los Angeles with a room available. On moving day, Walrus woke to the rumble of Dad's truck starting before sunrise. He and Mum were off to work like any other day. Walrus got out of bed and began packing her truck. As rain clouds formed over the mountains, she was encouraged that she'd made the right decision to embark on a new journey where her dreams would be built in California's endless sunshine. By mid-morning, Walrus was ready to leave. She went to the kitchen to grab a snack for the long drive ahead and found a brown paper bag with a post-it note on the counter. Good luck. Love, Mum. The drive took 3 days. As the Los Angeles skyline approached and the traffic ground to a halt, it was just as beautiful as Walrus imagined. The cars were flashier, the billboards enormous. The silver and brown skyscrapers stretched to the heavens. With the sun's warmth beaming through the windshield, Walrus lowered her window. LA didn't smell of the dank docks of home. It smelt of possibility. In her first week in LA, Walrus got to know the other animals living in the shared house. While they were pleasant and tidied the common areas, they were also constantly in a rush. All of them worked and took acting classes in their spare time. Sensing the speed of LA swirling around her, Walrus headed to some local cafes to apply to be a server. Over the next year, Walrus used every moment away from the cafe to work on her acting career. She saved up enough money to have professional headshots taken, enrolled in a vocal class to sharpen her raspy voice, attended an acting class, took contemporary dance, and joined a theatre group that ran a free show once a month. Walrus sent her headshots, audition tapes, and an albeit limited acting resume to production companies she found online. One day, after working the early morning shift at the cafe, she scrolled through her phone only to find another rejection email in her inbox. Walrus no longer felt like attending her script analysis class. She went home and found Bobcat splayed out on the couch in a pair of sweatpants, a TV remote resting on his chest, and a beer can in his paw. "Sup, Walrus?" said Bobcat, lifting his head off the pillows. "Nothing," Walrus replied. "I know that look," said Bobcat as he sat up on the couch. "Another rejection, huh?" "I'm getting nowhere. They all say the same thing. We've gone in another direction, want something different, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what I'm doing wrong." Bobcat got up from the couch and slinked into the kitchen, returning with a fresh beer can. "Here's my suggestion," said Bobcat, proffering the beer. "Step 1, you need a drink." Taking the beer, Walrus chuckled as she threw herself down at the other end of the couch. "Step 2, give my agent a call." Bobcat texted Walrus the name and number. Orangutan? She said. Bobcat nodded. Some animals say he's a bit of a schmuck, but he's helped me land commercials. I could do commercials, said Walrus, turning to leave for her room. Good luck, called Bobcat. Placing the beer on her nightstand, Walrus placed the call. Yellow, said the voice on the other end of the line. Hi, replied Walrus. I'm an actor and I need representation. What's your application process? Process? The voice asked. Well, is there a way I can set up a time to speak with orangutan? That's me, kid. Oh, hi. Walrus paused, unsure of what to say next. You're not from around here, huh? Said orangutan. What's your accent? Alaska, sir, replied Walrus. I was hoping you could help me find work. What's your name? Walrus. My name's Walrus. Interesting, said orangutan. You mean like tusks, flippers, dark brown complexion, that kind of walrus? Uh-huh. Walrus, I'm going to take care of you. I know what it's like to be an outsider trying to make it in this town. You understand? Give me a few minutes. Is this the best number to reach you at? Walrus said it was, before orangutan abruptly ended the call. She slurped at the beer and sat on her bed with her phone beside her, willing orangutan to call her back with an audition. Walrus began thinking of home. She hadn't spoken to her parents since she left. Dad was probably finishing his shift, and Mum would be starting dinner. She missed them. If she couldn't get work as an actor, she may as well have stayed home and not caused such a fuss. Maybe there was no point being in LA. As the effects of the beer washed over her, she closed her eyes. Her vibrating phone popped them back open. It was orangutan. He'd sent a text, a link to a contract, and the details for 3 commercials: toothpaste, tanning lotion, and a drug company. Delirious with excitement, Walrus opened the link and executed the contract. She rushed out of her room. He's going to help me! Thank you, Bobcat! Bobcat raised his beer to toast, but Walrus began to dance, shuffling back and forth, clapping her flippers and slapping her tail on the floor. This was the best moment of her life. Someone believed in her. Any thought of her parents melted instantly. When Walrus arrived at the Burbank studio for the toothpaste commercial, she sat in a waiting room with the other actors. A tiger ran dental floss through his molars, exposing his long, porcelain-coloured fangs. The crocodile beside him held a round mirror before her face, inspecting her sharp, triangular teeth that ran down her snout. Walrus pulled out her compact. She felt confident as she inspected her tusks that ran from her lips to the top of her chest like 2 sabres of ivory. Walrus was the first one to be called into the audition room, which was no larger than a classroom from her high school. A stage runner passed her a scripted card as she made her way to an X marked on the floor with masking tape. The casting director, an otter dressed in black, sat alone behind a trestle table. "Read the card," called the otter, not looking up from his bundle of notes. Walrus took a moment to compose herself. She studied the words carefully. It was her moment to shine. "For a bite that looks white," she beamed. "Uh-huh," said the otter, now looking at Walrus. "Show me your other teeth." Walrus opened her mouth, exposing her back teeth that jutted from her gums like broken yellow crayons. "Next!" yelled the otter. As she drove back to the cafe, Walrus cursed herself for thinking she had a chance. No one cared about her teeth in Alaska, but in LA, looks were everything. She was determined not to make the same mistake again. In the days before the tanning oil audition, Walrus prepared by lathering herself in whatever moisturizers she could find lying around the shared house. A craggy bottle of vitamin E cream at the back of the bathroom cabinet was suddenly fair game. This time, she would leave nothing to chance. Arriving at the Sherman Oaks studio, Walrus confidently scooted onto the soundstage in her slick, well-oiled body. The casting director was a porcupine with his quills slicked down under a Dodgers cap. He yelled at the actors to line up under the glistening downlights before walking up and down the row of hopefuls, tapping his pen on a wooden clipboard. "Ew," said the porcupine, pointing his pen at a sea lion wearing aviator sunglasses. "And," he continued, pointing at Walrus, "you." Walrus exhaled as she shuffled forward in the line as the remaining animals skulked out of the studio. The porcupine pulled a pair of readers from his jacket pocket, placing them over his pinkish nose. "Lift your right flipper," he said. Walrus whipped her flipper into the air as high as she could. The porcupine approached the sea lion, carefully examining every crease and line on the flipper. He nodded and placed a tick on his clipboard. A bead of sweat ran from the tip of Walrus's flipper into her armpit. Said the porcupine as he inspected Walrus's flipper. "Show me the other one." Walrus raised her left flipper. The porcupine walked under Walrus's flipper and stood behind her. "I've seen all I need," said the porcupine as he walked toward the sea lion. "Sea lion, follow me." "Thank you, Walrus." "But I haven't read any lines yet," begged Walrus. "We need someone, well, thinner," said the porcupine. "I'll lose weight." "Your tusks will be a distraction." "I'm prepared to file them down," said Walrus. "We're going a different way, honey." The porcupine turned his back and escorted the sea lion to the studio's far end, where they disappeared behind a heavy steel door that closed with a clang that echoed in the cavernous space. Alone, Walrus hung her head. It was hard to show up to an audition and project an air of confidence when she was at the mercy of casting directors indifferent to her dream. On the day of the drug company audition, Walrus called Orangutan on her drive to Santa Monica. "Yellow?" "Orangutan, it's Walrus. I'm on my way to the audition. There weren't any details in your message. What do I need to know?" "Walrus! Right! Good news, you've got the part. They saw your headshots and think you'll be perfect. Big paying job. Your face will be on every TV and billboard from here to New York. Congrats! Hey, I've got to jump." Walrus's heart was racing. It didn't feel real. All of her hard work was finally paying off. This was everything she had ever wanted. She would be a paid actor. As she parked the pickup truck in the parking lot, Walrus closed her eyes and began her breathing exercises. She pictured how proud Dad would be. She imagined what it would be like to finally find the courage to call home. Inside the building, Walrus followed signs taped to the walls until she found herself on a fully rigged set with a slew of cameras and hot white lights aimed at the stage. "You must be Walrus," asked Elk, wearing a bomber jacket and chinos. His antlers bobbed as he walked toward her like branches blowing in the breeze. "Follow me." Walrus waddled after Elk as he walked onto the set. White floors blended into a white backdrop with a white box in the middle, the size of a large bed. On top of the box was a fluffy white rug being brushed by a set designer. "So," said Elk, stopping at the edge of the box, "you're going to lie down here and stare straight down camera number 2. Your lines will be on the teleprompter." A swarm of animals surrounded Walrus and ushered her behind the set. Paws tugged at her clothing until she stood in her underwear before a mirror surrounded by lights. "Lift your flippers," asked one of the crew. A silky black dress came over her head before a makeup artist applied a thick layer of foundation, eyeliner, and lipstick. She stared at her reflection, marveling at how sultry and lustrous she'd become. She looked like a star. This is what it must be like to be a working actor. Elk appeared behind her. "We're ready for you to lay on the box." It was the moment she'd been waiting for. Walrus hauled herself up onto the box. The silkiness of her dress caused her to slide around on the plush rug. Brimming with confidence, she found the camera, marked with a 2. The teleprompter was set up in front of the lens. "Places! Places!" yelled Elk. The lighting surrounding the stage dimmed. "Rolling and action!" The teleprompter started to move. The words began to roll from bottom to top. Walrus smiled perkily and began reading the lines. Have you ever experienced this? You land a sleek, sexy animal but can't perform? You're not alone. Plenty of animals are just like you. What they don't know is that there's something you can do about it. Vital Rise is designed for all animals, so it doesn't matter if you caught a spunky mouse or a voluptuous walrus. Vital Rise will help you slay your prey. So what are you waiting for? Speak to your doctor about Vital Rise today. "Cut!" yelled Elk as he emerged from the darkness. "You're a natural! Now stay on the box while we take a few photos. Big smile. That's it, just like you were." Walrus continued to stare down the camera lens while photographers came from the edge of the set. "Hey," said Walrus. "What's Vital Rise?" "ED," Elk replied. "You know, erectile dysfunction." Walrus slid off the rug and stood next to it, shying away from the cameras to address Elk. "Will the ads be shown in Alaska?" "I guess so. It'll be on all the big networks." "When's it coming out?" asked Walrus, no longer feeling sultry, but cheap. "Depending on post-production, 4 to 6 weeks, said Elk. "I don't want to be the face of ED. "Hey, I'm just the director," said Elk as he trotted away. "You'll have to take it up with your agent or one of the studio execs." The excitement of landing her first paid acting role disappeared, and Walrus felt small. She pictured her parents on the way home from graduation. Mum was a vision of respectability in her pearls and the look of concern on her dad's face. There was no way they'd approve of their daughter being the face of Vital Rise. Every animal with ED would know her. Her friends would cringe at the sight of her billboards. Mothers would mute her commercial. This wasn't part of her dream. She had to cancel the commercial. Walrus charged back to the dressing room, ripped off the dress, changed into her clothes, and pulled out her mobile phone to call orangutan. The phone rang twice before going to voicemail. She dialed again with the same result. Walrus stuffed the phone in her pocket. Orangutan got her into this mess. He had to get her out of it. She quickly searched for his address and headed down the highway to see him. Orangutan's address was in a downtown strip mall. Walrus parked her truck near a small grocery store with a sign flashing, "Same day checks cashed." Next to it was a liquor store where a turkey, happily gobbling to himself, stumbled out with a brown paper bag tucked under his wing. As he walked to the far end of the strip mall, Walrus spotted the fiery red neon sign for Orangutan, Agents and Co. Walrus pressed her snout against the window. No one was in the waiting area, just vacant plastic chairs and billboard magazines scattered on a side table. She opened the door and gagged on the overwhelming smell of cigarettes and coffee. Behind the empty secretary's desk was a glass partition. Through it, Walrus saw orangutan sitting at his desk, flailing his arms and chortling to someone on the phone. His office walls were covered in shelves with Asian artifacts, including tea sets, prayer flags, and vases. She barged through the office door. "Orangutan!" Walrus shrieked. "I'll call you back," said Orangutan. "You must be Walrus. Phew! Nearly gave me a heart attack." He stood up from his desk, unrolled his sleeves and put on a plaid jacket over his once white dress shirt that was yellowed at the collar and strained across his pot belly. He lifted an unfiltered cigarette to his round face, sparking it with a metal lighter. "Please," said Orangutan, pointing his hairy hand at a chair near his desk. Walrus plopped in the seat and said, "We need to talk about the commercial." Her face felt hot under the heavily caked makeup from the studio. Orangutan approached a bar trolley in the corner of the room, pouring himself a drink while holding the cigarette in the corner of his mouth. "First commercial, right?" said Orangutan, returning to his chair. "Isn't Elk just a swell fellow? Known him for years." Walrus gripped the arms of the chair with her flippers. "I don't want to be the face of Vital Rise." Orangutan looked confused. "But you did the commercial." "I did, but you set me up. I wouldn't have agreed if I'd known. That's why you didn't tell me the details." Orangutan blew a raspberry. "But you're going to be famous. You should be thanking me. This is what you wanted." "No, not like this. That commercial can't come out." "Look, Walrus, I got you auditions you should have landed. Now let's calm down and find you another audition." "Are you going to cancel Vital Rise?" asked Walrus. She needed Orangutan to understand. As an unknown actor, her chances of being able to meet with a studio executive were nil. Orangutan wiped his palms down his face, seemingly exasperated. "Look, with the money from Vital Rise, you're well on your way. You can forget about Canada." "Canada? Canada? You don't even know who I am. Call Elk this second, otherwise I'll go to the studio and do it myself." "They won't listen, sweetheart. They only work with agents." Orangutan grinned as he lifted his glass to his lips. "I don't care who they work with. I'm withdrawing, pulling my consent or whatever. Call those animals and tell them it's off." "This is how it works, Walrus. I've seen millions of doughy-eyed youngsters like you come prancing into town. You signed a contract. Are you getting it yet? I call the shots." Orangutan's phone pinged. He picked it up and sniggered at something he'd received. Walrus pictured the billboards lining the highway into Los Angeles with her face on them and a sleazy tagline. Her friends from high school would see the ad and laugh at where her dreams had landed her. Mum would be horrified. Dad would be furious. Walrus wanted to make her parents proud, prove them wrong, and show them that she was somebody. Orangutan took a sip from his drink and chased it with a long drag of his cigarette. "Let's pretend this conversation never happened, and let's see what else I can get you." Walrus clenched her jaw. She gripped the arms of the chair so tightly that pins and needles shot through her chest. A burning sensation grew within her. Her tail tapped the ground, and she narrowed her eyes. Baring her tusks, Walrus stood, leaning over the desk. "Sit down, Walrus," said Orangutan, looking up at her. "There's nothing you can do. I own you." Walrus stormed towards the shelves on the wall. Spreading her flippers out, she knocked a blue and white vase from the shelf, shattering it into tiny shards. Orangutan screeched, slapped his hands on the desk, and jumped over it. Walrus kept charging, tearing at the prayer flags and knocking down a ceramic bust that exploded into fragments, flying to the four corners of the office. Orangutan leapt onto Walrus's back, but she was too strong. Candles, healing crystals, and bonsai trees crashed to pieces on the floor. Walrus slammed orangutan into the doorframe, sending him tumbling into the waiting area. She fled to the parking lot with orangutan screaming, "You're finished, Walrus! You're done! You'll never work in this town again!" The tires squealed as the truck fishtailed out onto the street. Walrus's body shook with adrenaline so hard she had to stop her vehicle alongside Athens Park. Walrus yanked the rearview mirror down to look at herself. The eyeliner had flooded from her eyes and ran around the edges of her charcoal snout. Tears streamed down her tusks as she realized what she'd done. She'd just destroyed her only relationship in the entertainment industry. She'd killed the innocent dreamer who believed she could make it in Hollywood. No one in LA cared if she made it or not, and now she never would. Her career was over. Walrus felt adrift on a broken piece of ice, floating alone amid an unforgiving sea. Back home, she had friends and a loving family. Alaska now felt like her only refuge. Walrus called the home number, hoping Mum would pick up the phone. "Walrus residence?" "Mum, I need help." "Honey, it's so good to hear from you. How are ya? You in trouble?" Walrus longed to just chat. It was calming to hear Mum's voice. Instead, she blurted, "I'm ready to come home." "Is everything all right? I need to come home. Is that okay?" Walrus's surrender tore through her. "Of course," said Mum. "You're always welcome, honey." "What about Dad?" "Oh, don't worry about him. I'll deal with him. When will we see ya?" "Give me a couple days. I'll see you by the end of the week." Walrus hung up the phone. It barely felt like a choice. Her existence in Alaska was all she had left. She'd live at home for a while, pick up where she'd left off with her friends, take a job at the dock. The next morning, Walrus packed the pickup truck and bid her housemates goodbye. They barely nodded. It seemed like they all knew someone who had given up and gone home. She counted each billboard she passed on the long drive and tried to push Vital Rise from her mind, but it was inescapable. As she crossed the Alaskan border, she remembered the steely look in her dad's eyes when he warned her not to embark on her folly. The air conditioning ran cold across her clammy flippers. Once home, she parked the truck in her parents' driveway. Her pulse quickened. Dad had been right all along. Should she apologize? Would he welcome her back when they'd never said goodbye? She sat in the truck trying to calm herself with her breathing exercises. "Walrus!" called Mum as she swung open the door to the porch. Walrus pulled herself out of the pickup truck and embraced her. The warmth of her mum's body felt strange. No one had hugged her since she left Alaska. Walrus relaxed into the folds of Mum's neck, the pearls pressing into her face. "Where's Dad?" Walrus asked, pulling herself away. "Oh, don't worry about him," replied Mum. "He decided to go to bed a little early." Walrus couldn't help but be disappointed that Dad hadn't bothered to stay awake for her arrival. He must have known she was coming. Dad had always been surly, but Walrus had never known him to hold a grudge like this. She followed Mum inside and turned on the kitchen light. As Walrus's eyes adjusted, streamers flashed through the air. "Surprise!" Dad stood at the kitchen table with a freshly exploded party popper in his flippers. "Welcome home," said Dad, engulfing Walrus in his bulk. "We missed you," said Mum, taking a steaming hot tray of tuna casserole from the oven and placing it on the table. "So how was LA?" During her 3-day drive, Walrus had ample time to prepare for the question. With her parents' eyes on her, the moment felt carved from a Hollywood script. If there was ever an opportunity to act, it was now. Walrus looked at their eager faces and delivered the toughest line. "You were right, Dad." Dad placed his flippers on her shoulders. "No, I wasn't. I didn't want to see you go. You tried, and I'm really proud of you." Walrus hugged her dad tighter. Her dream had left her wounded, but there was solace in Dad's embrace. His forgiveness put the last year into perspective. Her dreams had to be lived. She had to go to LA to pursue it. Had she never left, the unlived possibilities would have consumed her. Dad pulled himself away. "Tell me about your roles in LA." Walrus sat at the table and served herself some tuna casserole. "You're going to want to sit down, Dad." The Walrus was edited by Sylvia Schwartz and Todd Green. You can find the Vices and Virtues collection on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. To join the mailing list and receive updates on Matt Eddy stories, please go to matteddystories.com. You can follow me on Instagram @MattEddyStories. For all inquiries, please email admin@matteddystories.com. This story was dedicated to Darren and brought to you by Hudson Valley Podcasting.